Well, hello Internet, and welcome to part 1 of my Inkscape video tutorial. I've been getting a lot into how to design interfaces in my Android tutorial, and of course it's always great to be able to get a free piece of software that is almost as good as Adobe Illustrator. So in the next couple tutorials, I'm going to show you exactly how to do most everything inside of Inkscape. So I have a lot to do, so let's get into it. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to want to do is go to Inkscape.org and download Inkscape. And what's awesome about it is it works on any operating system. And even better yet, all of the key code shortcuts are exactly the same for every operating system. So if you're using Ubuntu, Linux, Mac OS X, Windows, anything, it's going to work. And you can get all that at Inkscape.org. And it's so easy to install, I'm not even going to bother showing you how to do that. Let's just start using it. Okay, and this is basically Inkscape, and I'm going to go through what all of these different things do here and across the top and all these things over here and the swatches down here and everything. One of the very first things I want to do, however, is you are given a default page that you are to work with if you would like. I'm going to get rid of it altogether. How you do that is you come down here where it has document properties and click on that, and then this dialog pops up here. Since I want to get rid of that, I just want to go to Show Page Border and say no. And while we are here, you can see that we can set our default units, and this is going to be for our rulers and pretty much everything else. And we can also define all of our different letters and document types we want to use, create custom sizes, and do all kinds of other different things. But I am done with that, so I'm just going to close that for now. And when I said rulers, I was talking about these guys up here. And if you want to turn those on or off, you just go Control R, they're back on. And this is where we would change our default units as well. Now I'm going to step through all of these guys over here, one by one, and talk about shortcuts and roughly what they do. This right here is our selector tool, and the shortcut for it is S. Very, very easy to remember. And this is going to allow you to select, move, scale, skew, all kinds of things in regards to moving around with your objects. Then we have our node tool, which shortcut is N. And if you can't remember N, you can just think of how the letter N looks kind of like lines connected with points. And that's how I remember that. And of course, that's going to allow us, since we are using vector art or a whole bunch of nodes with lines between them, that's going to allow us to edit the nodes, change a straight line into a curve, do all kinds of other things. We'll see more about that later. Then we have the tweak tool right here, which looks kind of like a wave, and the shortcut is W. It's going to do all kinds of really funky, crazy things, which are better explained just by showing how they work. Then we have our zoom tool, which is Z, which is going to allow us to zoom in, zoom out, zoom to the page size, zoom to fit all of our different objects, and so forth and so on. Then we have our rectangle tool. Shortcut is R. Going to allow us to draw rectangles, which in a second I'm going to show you how to do that. Then next we have our 3D tool, which shortcut is X, and the way I remember that is because we're going to be drawing in a 3D dimension. That makes you think of XY diagrams, which look like a cross or an X shape. Then we have the ellipse tool, of course, draws ellipses, circles, and a whole bunch of other different things, arcs, all kinds of stuff, you'll see. Of course, the shortcut for it is E. Then we have our polygon tool or star tool. That is just going to be either Shift 8 or the star symbol, and that's how we're going to pop that up. Going to look into that in more detail here in a second. Then we have the spiral tool, and when I see spiral, I think insane, and the shortcut for that is I, of course. Then we have our pencil tool, which the shortcut, of course, is P for pencil. Then we have our Bezier curve, or however you pronounce that, and that's going to allow us to draw our points and our lines and so forth, which is the best tool if we're using vector art or working with vector art. So of course, being the best tool, the shortcut is B, and there that is. Then we have the calligraphy brush, we have the text tool, which of course is T. Oops, I forgot the calligraphy brush, that is C. Then we have our spray tool, which is an awesome spray can, so of course the shortcut is A. Then we have our big eraser, which of course is going to be Shift E or capital E because it's our big eraser. Then we have our fill tool, and this looks like paint being spilled. And what would you say if you spilled paint? Uh-oh. Shortcut is U. Then we have our gradient tool, which is G. Then we have our eyedropper. Shortcut is D. And then we have this thing called the diagram connector, which I've never actually used, but if you want to use it, the shortcut is O. Then if we move down inside of here, you can see here are our swatches that we can drag and drop on all of our objects, as well as fill and stroke. O here stands for opacity. This little eyeball right here is going to toggle if we want to see our current layer or not. You can also toggle through the layers with this guy over here. And if we zoom out and zoom over here, you're going to see a whole bunch of different things that I almost never use. This is for new. The reason why is Control N opens up a new document, so why worry about that? Control O, or this little folder shape, is going to open up a document we previously worked with. There's the save symbol, which is Control S. Almost everything is Control, by the way. Print is Control P. This guy right here is going to allow us to import. And I don't even know what that symbol is. Oh, it's Control I. Well, that's easy to remember. It's going to allow us to import different graphics as well as SVG files or scalable vector graphics. But don't worry, you'll be able to use EPSs and PDFs and a whole bunch of other different things. This guy right here is going to export. That's Shift Control E. And we could export in Ping. That's the normal way to do it. Then we have our undo and we have our redo, which I don't really normally worry about those, except for Control Z, which is an undo. This guy right here is going to copy our selection to the clipboard. This is going to be cut. This is going to be paste, which of course we use Control X and Control V all the time. This is going to zoom in so that whatever we have selected is showing on the screen. This is going to zoom in to make sure that all the objects are on the screen, and this is going to zoom in to make sure that the document itself is on the screen. And yes, those work even if you don't have a little page drawn inside of your canvas window. This guy's going to duplicate any object that you might have, and that's just Control D for duplicate. This is going to create a clone, which I almost never do. Basically what it means is if you create an object and then you say I want to create a clone of it, if you change one object, the other one gets changed. If you decide you're not happy with that anymore, this little guy right here, it will allow you to break those objects apart. This guy right here is a snap to grid. This is a snap to guide, which we'll get into here in a second. This guy's going to group, which is Control G. Or ungroup objects, which basically if we group them, that just means if we move one, we move the other. And ungroup basically takes that away. Alright, and that is all I'm going to cover for right now. I am, however, going to open up a whole bunch of dialogues here. One way to do that, this is going to be the stroke and fill dialog. Let's click on that, and you will see there it pops up. See, fill and stroke. Then we can also do text, but for some weird reason this doesn't dock. So, you know, that's kind of silly, but of course we're going to need that. This guy right here is for layers. Let's open that up as well. This guy right here is for editing the XML document, which everything inside of Inkscape is an XML document. We're not going to worry about that right now. And this is going to allow us to align and transform our objects. So we opened all of those different guys up. And this is an HD video, so if you can't see it, view it full screen and everything will be wonderful. Now, what I like to do when I open up all these dialogues, actually, I'm going to open up a couple more. Let's go over to View first and scroll down through here, and we can open up our swatches library as well. And that just opened that up right there. And then I'm going to go into Object, and I'm also going to get Rows and Columns, which is way down here. Rows and Columns, there it is. So now I have every dialogue all here in one place, but it's kind of a mess, you might think. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click right here at the top of this, drag it until it's centered, and drop it. Then I'm going to do that with all of them. I'm just going to click inside of here, drag until it's in the center. Can't tell if you can see that, but there's like a square there. Drop it. And do exactly the same thing for the layers. Drag in the center, drop it, and then do it for the fill. Drag it, put it in the center, and drop it. Now what I'm going to be able to do is switch between all those different types of tools just by clicking these buttons. And that's the way I like it. You might not, and your way is the best way, so just do it that way. Across the top of the screen, you're going to have what is called the tool control bar, and it is going to change every single time you change your tools. So that's why it's called the tool control bar. And we'll get more into exactly what happens up there whenever all that gets selected. And mainly the other shortcuts that I use all of the time, while I'm just throwing in rectangles here, is Control A, which selects all of our different objects. Zoom in here on them. Undo, like I said before, was Control Z. So there, I got rid of it. There, I brought it back with Control Shift Z. You can zoom in or zoom out on the screen quickly by just pressing plus or minus on your keyboard. If you want to throw grids up on this screen, you just hit the number sign, which kind of looks like a grid, which is very, very useful. And guides, you could either just come over here. Let's get the selection tool, S, and then you can drag a guide out however you would like. And then, of course, we have the group, which is Control G. They are together. If we move one, we move them both. Or Control U, which is an ungroup. And there is a couple other ones that I use all the time, but I'm not going to just spend this whole entire tutorial showing you shortcuts. And we're going to go over those shortcuts a whole bunch of times. And if you want to get rid of the guides, you just click on them and drag them off the screen, and they just go away. Okay, so now I'm going to go through some of these different tools that we have over here, and the first one I'm going to cover is the rectangle tool. So I'm going to hit R just to bring up that shortcut, and then we can draw a great big giant rectangle on the screen. Now if I want to edit this guy, well, I can go and hit the S buttons for select, and you can see that these little arrows pop up, and they basically say, well, you are able to scale this rectangle however you would like. If, however, you'd like to rotate it, click it again with the selection tool, and you'll be able to rotate it right like that. Also, another thing you can do, let me zoom out here a bit, is you can skew the rectangle. And how we're going to do that is go to the middle parts, and you can see how I am skewing it. And Inkscape normally is not this slow. The only reason it's slow like this is because I'm videotaping this while I'm talking and using it. Let's delete that and switch back to rectangle again. Now if you hold the control key while you are drawing, the size is going to change in increments. See how it sort of like jumps? See? In increments. And those increments would be 2 to 1 or 3 to 1. And when I say that, I mean that the height is going to be 1 and the width is going to be 2 or 3 in that situation. If you don't hold the control key, it's just going to allow you to do pretty much anything. And you can think about this throughout Inkscape and know that this will pretty much always be true. If you're holding down the control key, you're basically incrementing something. Whether it is incrementing ever-increasing sizes for a rectangle or what have you. That is normally what the control key does whenever you are using it in Inkscape. If you instead hold down the Shift key while drawing a rectangle, it's going to draw from the center of the screen instead of drawing from the top to the bottom. See how that's different versus holding the Shift key? Comes out of the middle like that. And in general, that's pretty much all you're going to do with the rectangle for now. You're going to skew it, you're going to rotate it, you're going to increase the size. Of course, we are going to get into gradients and changing colors and all that other stuff here in a minute. Then, just to briefly go over it, this is the 3D tool, and the shortcut for it, of course, is X. And this guy is going to allow you to draw three-dimensional objects. And basically, you can just click in three-dimensional squares, basically, as you can see there on your screen. If you want to move this around, you can see there's a little X here, and if you click on it while you are still in the three-dimensional tool, you can see that it is moving around in three-dimensional space. That's kind of neat. Now on this three-dimensional shape, there are things called handles. That are these guys right here. And with them, you're going to be able to size your three-dimensional space, and also you're going to be able to project them into the Z space, or increase how far they go away from you, or however you want to think about that. You would also be able to change the color for this three-dimensional space by holding down the control key and clicking one of them. That would allow you to come in here and then change the color for one of those if that's something you'd want to do. Then we come into the fact that this guy up here has changed. Angle Y in this situation for our three-dimensional shape is going to represent, let me just click this whole thing, the angle of this, which is called a vanishing point. So if we change that, you can see that the angle for that top X vanishing point is moving that way. The red lines in this situation are also, these are all vanishing points, are going to make changes on the X dimension, while the Y vanishing point are going to make changes on the Y vanishing points. And there's basically 4 handles that are going to allow you to reshape the sides, while the other 4 are going to change the depth. So these are the handles that are going to allow you to change the sides, and these are the handles that are going to allow you to change the depth, as is that one right there. And like I said before, the center handle, or this X shape here, when clicked, is going to allow you to move the object around. And if you hold down the Shift key while you are using it, it's going to allow you to change the depth of the three-dimensional object. Now don't worry if you can't remember all this. I'm basically just covering everything just to make sure you get a basic gist of how these tools work. Then we get into the Ellipse tool, which is over here, and the shortcut for it is E, of course. Of course, with this guy, you're going to be able to make ellipses, you're going to be able to make circles, and you're going to be able to make arcs, and also like pie-shaped type things. If, whenever you are using the Ellipse tool, you hold down the Control key, this is going to constrain your drawing, and there you can see that it's making like a pie shape. If we come up here and zoom in and decide we would instead like it to be an arc, click on that, and now it's an arc. And if we decide instead we'd like it to be a circle, we click on that, and now it's a circle. Just like before, if you hold down the Shift key when drawing an ellipse, it's going to draw it from the center, like you see right there. And if you want to make sure that you draw a perfect circle, Ellipse tool, remember, is E shortcut. Want to hold down the Control and the Alt key at the same time. And that's going to make sure that it constrains the proportions to make sure that it is a perfect circle. Now, just like the rectangle, the square tools are going to change the scaling for our ellipse. And in this situation, the circle is actually going to be different ends of an arc. So we can click on it, and we can create a Pac-Man shape like that. And then this is going to be the end point, and we can go and move that around as well. Everything's pretty consistent inside of Inkscape, so basically after you learn how to use one tool, you'll pretty much be able to walk your way through how to work with the other ones. And of course, you can also change the starting arc position and the ending one by playing around with that. And you can zoom out and we can do it again. Say, of course you have to select it, and you can see there, see how it's moving around. So that is a very useful tool. Now we'll go into and take a look at the star or the polygon tool. Shortcut is star, of course, Shift 8. There it is. Of course, it is going to allow you to do all kinds of funky things. Actually, this is a pretty useful tool. Let's go and reset all of our settings for this guy by just clicking there, and there you can see that we have a basic star shape. It also has squares on it, and those are handles that we can use to change the way that our star looks. Pretty cool. Very, very adaptive. If we delete that, hold down Control, guess what it does? It constrains it so that it only moves or rotates at 15 degrees at a time. Shift is going to draw it from the center just like it always does. And then we get to these funky guys up here and exactly what they do. Now corners is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically going to increase the number or decrease the number of corners in your polygon shape or your star shape. You're also going to be able to change your spoke ratio with star, and you can see that that's just moving those center points out, and eventually it will become a regular polygon if you keep doing that. By spoke ratio, mean that guy right there. And basically, as you play around with Inkscape, you're going to find that these guys, specifically the polygon and star tool, are best played with and experimented with. But I'm going to show you, because at face value it doesn't really look like it does much, but you can create numerous different types of shapes just using this polygon tool. So we could do something like, let's just draw this right, that. And then let's say that we want to change our number of corners to, I don't know, 500, like that. And you can see that it created this funky sort of object-y weird thing. It's kind of neat, just playing around. Another thing that you could do, let's just delete that for now, is let's say that you needed to draw like a path of rocks or something like that. What you could do is switch into your polygon tool, and then let's just leave 5 corners as it is. Let's go into rounded because we want more of a rounded type polygon if these are going to be rocks, and let's just increase that, I don't know, to 0.3 for example. And then let's take randomized and take that up to 1.7. So type in 1.7 like that, zoom out, and then let's change to a more rocky type of look color-wise, and we can just start drawing. Well, that's up. I know why, because that's a star. Well, this is how you would make a puddle type thing. Kind of funky looking, or weird starfish, but that's not what I'm looking for. Selection tool, delete, jump back into our polygon tool, star, and let's jump over here and click on polygon. There we go. Now if we want to come in here and draw some rocks, and you can draw, well, these are all yellow rocks, but you can see that it's sort of like a rocky pattern that is completely randomized and really funky. And there is just a ton of different really cool things you can do in regards to this inside of Inkscape. If we want to change all our colors, let's just select everything. This is a solid color, and then let's say we want a reddish brown. I didn't quite get all of them. Oh, there's a nice brown. And there we go. Looks kind of rocky type. So that is the star and polygon tool. And then the last thing I'm going to look at here is the spiral tool, which is this guy right here. Remember, I for insane. Click on that, and we can just start drawing some spirals. Now, the big thing about the spiral tool is these guys and understanding how these three guys work. In fact, you're probably not going to use the spiral tool that much, but what the heck, we're here, so let's go and look at it. First, you have turns. Now, as turns is increased, basically what it's going to monitor or change is how many full circles we're going to draw before we get to the outer end. And by outer end, I mean this point down here. That's the outer end. So let's go in here. You can see, as we increase that, you're just going to have a bigger spiral. Drawing, drawing, drawing. Divergence, or this guy right here, controls whether as the spiral winds, if the distance between the arcs is going to change. So if we have our spiral here, you can see, as I increase that, it's tighter in the middle, and then as it gets outwards, it is bigger, or has bigger spaces in between it. And then we have inner radius, and what that is going to do for us is, it's probably better explained by just saying if it's a 0, meaning that the inner radius is set to 0, that means that the spiral is going to start in the center of our spiral. Now if we increase that, you're going to see, whoop, too much. There we go. It's basically going to draw the spiral in. So inner radius is basically just going to control where exactly with our spiral, the spiral is going to start drawing. So that is a ton of different things and a good overview of some of the tools inside of Inkscape. In the next part of the tutorial, I'm going to walk through all of these different guys, how the fills and all the rows and columns, swatches, align, distribute, layers, fills, and strokes, and a whole bunch of other different things work. Please leave any questions or comments below. Otherwise, till next time.